Alright, I am back with another video, and today we're doing an Arcane Archer build, because I haven't really touched the subclass as much as I would like to. The thing is, though, I find with Arcane Archer is it's very hard to justify not just going full fighter in a lot of cases. I originally had the idea to mix Arcane Archer with Ranger to see if the two bow classes, worked well together in that case, but honestly, Ranger just didn't really add a lot to the builds. Sure, you got a bit of flavour that was more Ranger-esque, like Ensnaring Strike and Hail of Arrows, or whatever, Hail of Thorns I believe it's called, I'm getting that mixed up now. But it just didn't really do much. Gloomstalker might have, but I've already done a Gloomstalker build recently, and while I looked into things like Hunter or Swarmkeeper, there just wasn't too much that I found to be quite satisfying from using Ranger. So I decided to look into it. Okay, so with Arcane Archer, what multiclass would really give a lot of benefits? And, well, it's the obvious choice. You saw the thumbnail of the video. There is going to be a rogue multiclass today, but it makes sense for more reasons than you would normally expect. And I'll go into detail as we go, because honestly, your rogue subclass will be kind of up to you with this build. Again, you'll see what I mean as we get into it. But honestly, when you kind of play this Arcane Archer character, having the access to some of the abilities that Rogue gives you really does just give a lot of extra utility to the class and makes the whole gameplay loop feel a lot more free-flowing. The main thing you're going to be missing out on is obviously your second extra attack from level 11 of Fighter, which is a bit of a blow, as being able to shoot 3 arrows in a turn would definitely be powerful, but I definitely do feel that the utility and the kind of, again, the new gameplay loop that comes from it is absolutely worth it. So I hope you guys enjoy this video. It's a bit more of a basic build today, but I feel like with the kind of justification for the features that we'll be taking, I think you might find that there's actually more than meets the eye here in terms of intrigue and how the build plays overall. So without further ado, let's get into the build. Kicking things off, I decided to play as a Dragonborn today just because I haven't built one in a while. I'm trying to use some of the races that I don't use nearly as much, and I quite like the look of the Dragonborn with the outfit that we have here, although I did forget to change the colour of the boots. Oh well, I still think overall it looks pretty good. I went for a brass Dragonborn because, again, don't really build them enough, and I kind of like the kind of brass and green kind of hue that we got here. Gives us fire resistance if you want to play a Dragonborn, but honestly, not necessary for the build. Pick your favourite. Now, for our starting class, usually when I build Rogue into my builds, I often start with it, just because the extra skill proficiencies are really nice, and really, we don't need Constitution saving throw proficiency here, as nothing that we really do with this build is going to be concentration-based, so really, there's no reason not to start Rogue. Since we get all of our weapon and armor proficiencies from multiclassing into Fighter anyway, we might as well start with Rogue for the extra benefits that it gives. But even so, you're still going to be able to use a bow right off the bat as well, a hand crossbow, so overall, you're not going to really be losing out on too much if you want to go straight into the archer stuff at level 1. For your background, again, it's entirely up to you what you want to pick. It just depends on what skill proficiencies that you want. Since we started with a rogue, I went with the criminal background, giving us deception and stealth, but honestly, again, it's really up to you. Now, for our ability scores, we're actually looking at a pretty standard rogue spread here. Strength is at 8, we don't need it, but we are going to have a 19 in strength by the time this build is done. Dexterity is at 16, this is obviously going to be our main attacking modifier for our bows. Constitution is at 14. This is just because, well, as being a ranged character, we're actually not going to need a lot of HP as compared to more frontline fighters. So Constitution being at 14 is a nice middle ground. You're still, because you're going to be taking a lot of levels in fighter in this build, you're actually going to have a pretty decent chunk of HP by the time all is said and done anyway. Intelligence is at 16. This is going to be our spellcasting modifier in quotations for our arcane arrows. Even though our arcane arrows aren't technically classed as spells in some aspects of the game, they still do require our intelligence for the spell save DC of them, so we do need to have a high intelligence here. Wisdom and Charisma are both at 10, mainly because I didn't really want to dump either, but I will also point out an alternative route in this game where you can bump one stat down to 8 and actually bump Dexterity up to 17 to take a half feat for Dexterity later. And while I didn't do this in my testing because I felt like it was actually a little bit of overkill in most cases, I will be showing it off in this video here just to make things a little bit more interesting. So yeah. For our skill proficiencies, really, again, you're a rogue, take whatever you like, it really doesn't matter. I've gone for sleight of hand, perception, intimidation, and persuasion. Keeping deception and stealth from our background, we've got a really nice, well-rounded set of skills. It's a bit of a shame that even though, like, it's a bit of a shame that we're going to have low charisma in this build, but if you see here, we actually do have a pretty decent modifier to our charisma stats here, even with the fact that we've dumped it, so you can still be somewhat of a party face, but if you'd rather spec into other things, you can, but even with an 8 in charisma, rogues are still really good at things. I could see maybe dropping wisdom if you don't care about the saving throws and going for charisma instead, which honestly is valid. That does give you a bit more, so really kind of play around with those dump stats a bit. You'll have a bit more room to play if you decide to start with a 16 in dexterity, which could be a bit more well-rounded, but honestly, you just do whatever you want to do. Right, let's multiclass straight into Fighter to get all of the extra stuff that we're going to need. We're going to get access to Second Wind, which is going to actually be a very free thing to use in this build. It's because we're going to be taking a lot of fighter levels, we'll actually get a decent chunk of healing out of it, as well as the fact that it uses our bonus action. It's just a quick one-off, quick pop-it heal that you're going to be able to use pretty consistently. Of course, also we get all simple and martial weapons, light armor, medium armor, and shields. We don't need to go for heavy armor in this build. I'm wearing medium armor because I want to take the best advantage of our dexterity in this build. So medium armor is going to be the highest that we're going to wear anyway, so we get all of that stuff just fine. As for our fighting style, we're obviously going to be taking archery to give us a +2 bonus to our ranged weapon attack rolls, which is awesome. That's going to really help when we inevitably take Sharpshooter later. Because come on, there was no way I wasn't going to do that. At Fighter level 2, you're going to get Action Surge, and I absolutely love using this on the opening round of a turn. Being able to fire off up to 4 arrows in a single turn with Action Surge is going to feel so potent with this build. You will have seen maybe in the combat footage earlier how I pretty much just annihilated 2 of the enemies in the encounter within like the first turn, which was because of Action Surge. So, you know, definitely an essential part of this build. At Fighter level 3, we get to choose our subclass, and of course we're going to be going with Arcane Archer, as I've already stated. This will give us access to our Arcane Arrows feature and the unique resource that is tied to them. We're also going to get to choose a cantrip, and since we are playing as a rogue with, you know, all of these stats, I do think having a little bit of guidance could go a long way if you don't want to have a cleric in your party. We're also going to be able to grab our first 3 Arcane Arrows here, and there's a lot to pick from. You've got your Banishing Arrow, which can banish targets to the Feywild, which I'm not going to be taking this time. I didn't find it was too useful in my testing, so I think we're going to go with something else. Now, I would say my first one that I absolutely want to pick, which actually is very useful, is the Shadow Arrow. The Shadow Arrow is going to deal psychic damage, which is not often resisted unless you're up against Mind Flayers or something, which is possible. But what the main thing this will do for you is that it's a Wisdom saving throw, which is always really good to hit, as well as it blinds your opponents. This is essential for getting the upper hand in a ranged battle. If you're up against enemy spellcasters who have ranged attacks, or enemies with crossbows, bows and arrows, whatever, you will be able to really easily shut them down and give yourself a huge advantage with this arrow, which is why it's one of my favourite picks to start off with. You're also going to gain access to a couple more. Let's have a look at what we can pick up. I really like the Grasping Arrow here. It deals poison damage, and the affected entity's movement speed will be reduced, giving you the bit of advantage to be able to keep your distance from your enemy. But they will also take an additional 2d6 slashing damage when they move, which is really good. That's very similar to Booming Blade. So again, because you're going to be playing at range and able to really take advantage of the distance you create with your enemies, you will be able to easily get off that extra bit of slashing damage. It was actually what killed the second enemy in the combat footage, which I thought was very funny. And then finally, your third one is kind of up to you. I kind of like having the more ballistic, kind of punishing a group bundled up kind of option here, which is the Bursting Arrow, giving you a bit of extra force damage, as well as that dealing a kind of explosive force damage in like a radius around your target, dealing damage to multiple enemies. Could be good for picking off weakened foes. The other one I also really like is Enfeebling Arrow. If you're up against strength-based enemies, this one is really good. It will cause their weapon attacks to only deal half damage, which is very fun. It also deals necrotic damage, which, I mean, that's a very good damage type to have. Usually once you get past Act 2, but overall it's still really good. I really like the Feeble condition. I think it's just a very powerful condition to be able to spread around, so I'd recommend picking that up probably at some point in the build, but I do like having these 3 to start. 3 different damage types and 3 unique and powerful effects, which I absolutely love. Moving on to fighter level 4, we do get our first feat of the build, and since I'm showing off the half feat route today, we're going to be grabbing Athlete. Athlete is going to allow us to bump up our dexterity by 1, and it's going to allow us to, if we go prone, standing up will use significantly less movement. This is going to help that if we somehow slip up or get knocked down, we can still disengage really easily. Also, our jump distance will increase by 50 feet. This build is going to excel at being able to get up to high up locations, basically having free movement around the battlefield, allowing you to position yourself in the best possible place to be able to rain down arrows from above. I do find, though, because we're going to have such high strength in this build, thanks to the Club of Hill Giant strength, which we'll be using later, I do find that Athlete might sometimes be a bit overkill, but being able to bump up with a half feat here is actually quite nice, because it's going to allow us to round out our stats very, very evenly by the time we're done with the build. At level 5, you're going to gain access to extra attack, which is obviously important, so we can fire multiple arrows in a turn. At fighter level 6, you're going to be able to grab another feat. Now, up to you what you want to take at this point. You do have enough dexterity, I think, and we'll probably starting to be accumulating the equipment needed to really make Sharpshooter work. So let's grab it now. Your ranged weapon attacks will not receive penalties from the high ground rules, just giving you a bit more kind of freedom if you need it. However, the main ticket here is obviously that by taking a -5 penalty to your attack roll, all of your arrows will deal an additional flat 10 damage. Yes, this does work on the arcane arrows. Yes, it is very, very powerful. Obviously, this is an essential feat for this build. Now, at fighter level 7, I'm going to show this off real quick, but you probably want to multi-class after fighter level 6 and start building into your rogue stuff, but I'm going to show you why. First up, we're going to gain access to our magic arrow feature, allowing you to overcome physical resistances with your arrows. You're going to get another arcane arrow as a resource to use your arcane shots, and then also you're going to grab curving shot. Whenever you miss with any magical ranged attack, you can use a bonus action to attack the next closest target with the same attack. Now, as far as I understand, this is only a bonus action restriction here, and also you can only do it once per turn, but still, that being a bonus action, if you, for example, may have a bit of trouble meeting the Sharpshooter requirement, as it were, this can actually be really, really useful for curving your attacks. The issue being that it does use your bonus action. So you have to be careful and think about how you want to use it when you want to use it, because your bonus action can be very, very valuable, which is why there's going to be talks about rogue. You probably can see where I'm going with this. But we also do get to choose another arcane shot, and I am going to be taking that enfeebling arrow. While we can grab another feat here, I actually do want to show off the rogue stuff really, really quickly. So, first off, we get to get our level 2 rogue features, namely we're going to be able to hide, dash, and disengage as a bonus action using our cunning action. Obviously, being able to dash is amazing, being able to give us a ton of distance, and also disengaging is really, really good. If we end up in melee somehow, we can easily escape it, which just feels very, very good on an archer, which is why I feel like these skills are pretty much essential. Now, as for your level 3 rogue subclass, there's a lot of things to talk about here. Arcane Trickster obviously can work for this build because we have access to our intelligence stat being as high as it is. So you can pick up a couple of extra cantrips if you really want to lean into the spellcaster flavor. You can get Booming Blade here, but unfortunately this only works on melee attacks, so it's not going to fit our build too well. A bit of a shame, but if you end up in melee combat for whatever reason, this might be a good way to deal some extra damage, just bonk them with your club. There's also spells that you can grab, but honestly, I don't think Arcane Trickster, I should say, is really the best choice here. Assassin would be an amazing choice, giving you a really good opening round. I showed off how Assassin works with Death Cleric a couple of videos ago, and I do think that Assassin's Alacrity, restoring your resources, Assassinate Ambush, giving you a guaranteed critical hits with the Sharpshooter would be insanely powerful, and also you gain advantage on attack rolls against creatures that haven't taken a turn yet. That helps with your sneak attack. So Assassin and Arcane Archer, definitely a combo. Pick it if you want it. Swashbuckler, unfortunately, is not so good here. You may think, oh yeah, we can make a melee attack and then we don't provoke opportunity attacks, but unfortunately, it's just not really going to help us that much, especially since even though we are going to level 4 of Rogue in this build, where you would get the dirty tricks, they all kind of require you to be in melee, except for the one that lets you cast Vicious Mockery. So overall, probably not the best idea, although I absolutely do want to do some sort of hand crossbow Swashbuckler build in the future, so maybe I'll keep an eye out for that. And then there's Thief. Yeah, I know it's the boring one. Yeah, I know it's the one that everyone takes. Yeah, I know it's the most obvious pick. But having that second bonus action on this build specifically gives you so much. Disengage and dash in the same turn. Give yourself plenty of distance without any concern. Disengage and jump. Put yourself up on a really high roof. Boom. They got nothing they can do against you. It just gives you so much. You can use your curving shot and still be able to do a dash or a disengage or whatever. Like, you just have access to so much with that second bonus action that just makes this build flow so much better and feel so much less awkward to play. But I have to take it. I'm sorry. I know it's boring. But there are cases for Assassin, Swashbuckler, and Arcane Trickster. Arcane Trickster less so. So please, feel free to mess around with this. There's some cool stuff here that's not just Thief. But Thief just feels the best if you want to focus on the Arcane Archer side of things, which I really do. And then finally, at Rogue level 4, you get to choose another feat. At this point, I'm going to suggest bumping up our intelligence, now that we're really going to be starting to take advantage of our Arcane Arrows. We're not going to go to Rogue level 5, instead we're going to jump back over for a final feat from Fighter level 8. And at this point, you got a choice to make. You either bump up your dexterity to 20 or bump up your intelligence to 20, really. I mean, there are other things here, but I'll be honest, none of them really stand out to me. So it's one of the two. In my testing, I did dexterity because of Sharpshooter, and honestly, I just think that's the best way to go. But really, it's entirely up to you. And that is the build. Overall, what you're going to be getting out of this is an extremely strong archer yet again. Every time you make an Arcane Archer build, you're just going to be coming out with some of the best ranged attacks in the game. Sorry, Ranger. You get so many powerful debilitating status effects that you get to deal, plus the extra damage gained from all of your buffs and such like that. You gain access to your Sharpshooter here with your magic arrows, as you can see, 1d8 plus 18 piercing damage, plus an extra 2 acid, which is going to total 20 damage with every shot, regardless of what we do. So yeah, our base arrow shot is at minimum a 21 and at max a 28. Yeah, that's a lot of damage. Obviously, it's Sharpshooter, we know this. But then you're being able to stack on psychic damage, necrotic damage, force damage, or even poison damage on top, and even your sneak attack damage, because guess what? Sneak attack can trigger on your arcane arrows, meaning that you could get a single shot to deal upwards of, well, stupid amounts of damage. You could be looking somewhere in the range of about 50 to 60 per if you get a full arrow with sneak attack and all that. Like, it's insane how powerful the shots from this bow can be if you play your cards right. And again, having all of these debilitating status effects really turns the tide in your favor. And because we're a rogue, I mean, we can head over to the skill proficiencies here. You're still going to be pretty good as the kind of leader of the party here. Like, look, you got your stealth and sleight of hand really high. Your arcana and nature's high. Look at this. Like, we got so much stuff. Perception, and then deception. Look, we have a flipping 10 in charisma, and our deception and persuasion is at +8. And our intimidation is a 4. Like, come on. You cannot tell me that this build doesn't have just that little bit of everything for everyone. But now, since we're here, let's talk about the equipment. First up, typical ranged build kind of melee weapon attire here. We're never really going to be using our melee if we can help it, so just having access to just useful buffs in our melee slot is going to help out. Namely, the Club of Hill Giant Strength can be obtained very early on and set your strength to 19. This is going to give us an insane jump distance combined with Athlete, because that's based on our strength stat, as well as just allowing us to, if we absolutely need to, we can still bonk someone on the head. And then you're just going to put on any shield you like. I'm just using a basic shield for the +2 AC to just show that it can be really any shield. So any shield that you pick up that you think has a useful effect throughout the game, slap it in here for a free 2 AC extra, which gives us a grand total of 22 AC. You're going to be pretty hard to hit. Now, as for your bow, you can pick whatever you like. The usual endgame options like the Darkfire short bow, which will give you haste, which would be super, super strong on this build. The Deadshot, the Gontomeal, all of those will work. But for your early game option that you can grab right off the bat that would be good throughout the entire game, obviously the Titanstring bow is your best bet. This weapon will deal additional damage equal to your strength modifier, which for us, thanks to the Club of Hill Giant Strength, is another +4 on top of the +5 that we're going to get from our dexterity checks, which is really, really, really nice. It's also a +1 weapon on its own. So even though it doesn't show it in the damage calc here, that extra damage from our strength modifier is going to go a long goddamn way. That's a 1d8 +10. +10. That's very, very fun. Very, very fun indeed. So, with that, that is basically, that can be your starter bow. You can obtain that pretty much right away in Act 1 by doing the Find the Missing Shipment quest, and then you can upgrade to any subsequent bow that you like, but honestly, the Titanstring bow might just be your best bet for the most part, so I would stick with that. And then as for the equipment, it's all very simple things that just kind of help the build along. This build is very simple in its execution, but knowing how to play it properly and using everything at your disposal is where the kind of skill and complexity comes in. It's just a really good archer build, guys. I don't know what else to say. For your headpiece in the endgame, obviously, as always, the Mask of Soul Perception is great, giving you a +2 bonus to your attack rolls, initiative rolls, and perception checks, as well as giving you the Detect Thoughts spell. Basically, this is mainly here to help offset that Sharpshooter penalty, but, you know, we're trying to get away from that -5 penalty, so that +2 goes a long way to help with that. Also giving us a bonus to our initiative rolls, meaning that we can go on really early on in the combat, meaning that we can get our powerful shots off soon. We're basically kind of already playing an assassin. But in the early game, before you get that, the Marksmanship hat kind of does the same thing on a lesser scale, just giving you a +1 bonus to ranged attack rolls. For the armor, I'm busting out a classic, one of the ones that made the Dancer of Islestry so popular. It's the 1T scale mail. This is basically just here to give us a piece of medium armor that will use our full dexterity modifier. And give us a +1 bonus to our initiative rolls as well, giving us a total of +3 when all is said and done, so we're really, really likely to go first. This is just a strong mid-game option that you can pick up fairly soon as you enter Act 2. Any medium armor up until then is going to work, and any medium armor after that is going to work. To be honest, most people probably want to upgrade to the Armor of Agility, but the 1T scale mail will do just fine if you want to use that armor on someone else. The Gloves of Archery will give all of our ranged weapon attacks an additional 2 damage. It's just more damage. How can you say no to that? We're also going to gain access to the Swiry Shoes, further increasing our jump distance and giving us a +1 to our acrobatics. Honestly, you can put any boots you like. For Disintegrating Nightwalker is probably the usual pick that everyone would take, but I like to shake things up a little bit every so often, giving us even more jump distance. You'll be able to leap up entire buildings in a single bound. For your accessories here, we've got the Corvid token. This is just here. It gives us a bit of extra jump distance, which is nice. We can polymorph into a raven, which could be fun flavor-wise, but it's mainly here to give us a permanent feather fall effect so that we don't have to worry about all of our jumping around incurring fall damage. Next, we have the Caustic Band, giving all of our weapon attacks an additional 2 acid damage. It's just even more damage somehow. Again, we're doing upwards of probably 60 damage per arrow at this point if we're using our Arcane Shots. It's getting really stupid at this point. And then finally, this is kind of just a catch-all. Obviously, it is the Risky Ring, which is in of itself a risk. It gives you advantage on all attack rolls, basically guaranteeing that we offset the Sharpshooter penalty as well as get consistent sneak attacks. However, it comes with the downside of receiving disadvantage on saving throws, which can be very, very risky when our soft stats are Wisdom and Charisma, which are the nastiest saving throws. But honestly, if you play this build right, using the high ground to your advantage, using even hiding to your advantage, you shouldn't actually need the Risky Ring. You should be able to consistently get advantage without needing to play with the ring. However, it is a nice failsafe to have if you're struggling with that a bit and you're not too worried about enemies being able to inflict saving throws on you, especially from a distance. So you'll have to weigh if the Risky Ring is really worth it. Honestly, I would try playing without it, throwing whatever you like in the ring slot instead. But if you find that it's a little bit too inconsistent to get advantage and you find you're missing your shots more often than not, then feel free to slap it on. But there are some other rings that could work with this build if you so desire, so feel free to give them a look. But yeah, that is the build. We don't even have any camp clothing or dyes today. This is just the raw outfit, which I think honestly looked pretty damn good. I like the default colors and how they contrast the Dragonborn that we're here with. I did forget to color the boots, but actually it looks a little bit better in this screen than it did in the last one. So honestly, I just don't think the build looks too bad as it is. So yeah, no camp clothing, no dyes. This is just basic fashion. But yeah, that is the build. Like I said, a bit basic. I know I'm probably not the only person to ever do this, but I do like kind of pointing out how the equipment can all stack together, and how having that extra bonus action just really does help the feel and flow of the build. Also, getting that sneak attack is just awesome. But again, there are other multi-classes that could work for this. Like I say, I did toy around with a 7-5 split in Ranger, which does have some benefits, especially maybe if you went Gloomstalker or Swarmkeeper, but honestly, I just think this is better. There are some other things, you know, throw some Wizard in there. Bladesinger, believe it or not, can actually get a little bit out of this with the extra movement speed and AC. Could make you very, very hard to hit. There's a bunch of different things you could do with it. But honestly, I just think, like, basic sometimes is just better. And in this case, I really, really like what we have here. It's kind of an old-style Hobo power build, I guess, that I used to do on the channel quite a bit, you know, when we used to dive into Thief Rogue for bloody everything. But, you know, I just like how the simplicity of this build contrasts, you know, like, for, you know, the powerful arcane nature of the arrows. So, yeah. But, yeah, no, there's not really much else to say. That's probably going to do it for me. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you all next time. Goodbye.